Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For decades, India has suffered in silence, bleeding from 1,000 cuts as Pakistan's terror proxies struck at our heart, leaving behind shattered families, smoldering homes, and unanswered cries. And what were we told? Move on, show restraint, take it on the chin. The world is with you. No more those homilies. Because on April 22nd, 2025, something changed. That day, 26 of our own innocent, unarmed, and were targeted solely for their faith. They were lined up and executed in cold blood. It was the final straw. It was the spark that lit the fuse. Since then, India's fight back has been relentless. Operation Sindoor wasn't just a response, it wasn't just revenge, it was a resolute message. If you shed innocent blood on Indian soil, we will hunt you down on yours. And now the Modi government has raised the bar. Top government sources have confirmed to Times Now, in the clearest declaration yet, any act of terror from here on will be treated as an act of war. That is the warning that is going on. It's no longer an empty threat. That is the paradigm shift that India has decided to make. This is not a wimpy India. This is an India that is absolutely self-confident. It doesn't need any props from the world. It doesn't need any sanction from the UN. It doesn't need any lectures from the West. Let that sink in. Not just a policy shift, but a doctrine redefined. No more tolerance, no more patience, no more pinpricks, and no more homilies. Terror will now invite war, swift, targeted, and unforgiving. That is a message that should ring the bells in Pakistan, and that should be a message to the Western world that whether or not they stand with India in the IMF, whether or not they decide to block funding to terrorism, whether or not they can control these players who need to be stopped in their adventures with terror, India will do it alone. It has the self-confidence, it has the political will, it has the defense forces, it has the weaponry, it has everything. And a nation of 140 crores will no longer just shed tears. They will act when they need to. Now, what can India do to Pakistan? Let's try and understand. Let me go across. India will have additional forces, and these can be deployed in the border. Very clearly, that is the message that India is giving. The counter-offensive action will be taken. There is no more sense of normalcy. Jo bhi kar lo, hum dekh lenge. Let's talk, let's have dialogue, let's have diplomatic meetings, let's exchange cups of tea. None of that. Push for sanctions by the United Nations, and the United Nations is also going to be on test. Recall ambassadors, clear out embassies. We do not want to have diplomatic relations with any nation that actually exports to us their terror factories. Also, halt entire trade as a financial strike. This is what India will do. Lobby globally for financial restrictions. Someday the IMF will realize. Also, Article 51 of the UN Charter says it guarantees inherent right to self-defense against armed attacks, and therefore India is not going outside the UN Charter. It is exercising its right to protect its own citizens from the terror factories. The UN resolution 1373 also says states must ensure that territories are not used to plan or support terror acts. And if that is clear, it is a message that needs to go out to the global community, to Parliament of every single country, and of course, to Pakistan. We are not going to wait for any phone calls, any diplomatic meetings. We are going to strike. We are going to destroy your air bases if you target ours. we are going to destroy your terror camps if you kill innocent Indians. That is the message. In real terms, this is actually the beginning of the zero tolerance on terror. I'm going across to our reporters because even today there is a sense of high alert in several places, including the border areas of Jaisalmer, Kutch, even parts of Jammu and Kashmir. Let me first go across straight to Jaisalmer, where Sabyasachi joins me this evening. And Sabyasachi, what is the state of alert in Jaisalmer? Everybody is being asked to move away from the borders. There is heightened sense of some impending strike that Pakistan may be planning. What are the arrangements? What can you tell us?
Well, that's right. See, a high alert has been issued here in Jaisalmer, and let me show you the visuals around. The entire city of Jaisalmer is completely locked down because of security concerns. All the shops, every single people are inside their houses. Now, because of the continuous projectiles which are being intercepted by our armed forces, today also at around 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon, there was projectiles which were intercepted by our armed force, and yesterday at around 4:30 in the morning, the Pakistani had launched the projectile into Jaisalmer, which had landed in front of a residence which was just 500 meters away. And in fact, Times Now has exclusively spoken with the people of these residents, and they claim that the projectile was around 5 to 6 feet long. But they also extended their support to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to our armed forces, stating that no matter what happens, we are not afraid of Pakistan and we would continue to give them a befitting reply.
Well, Sabyasachi, yes, Jaisalmer did see heightened projectiles that were coming in from Pakistan last night, and India well prepared, not taking any chances. Going across to Priyank Tripathi, joining me from Srinagar. Priyank, what is the state of alert? We understand high alert in Pathankot, where we have an airbase. Also along the LOC, where artillery shelling has continued all day, all night yesterday. What is the sense of anticipation and what is the sense of high alert in the areas around Srinagar?
See, Navika, the biggest example is Rahim Yar Khan Airport, which is in Punjab province of Pakistan, where the Indian forces have managed to blow up one of the missiles, which has created a big crater on the runway. While on the other side, there have been 10 signature dot, which was intercepted by the Indian radar at the Srinagar airport, which was foiled by the Indian Armed Forces, by the Indian Air Force. This happened in the early morning when the multiple explosions were heard, and we managed to gun down the missiles, the aerial object which was going towards the Srinagar air base. Later to that, in the second half of the day, around 12 noon, we also saw that there were 2 more drones which were flown from the Pakistan side, and they were attempting to target the Srinagar air base. So it is quite clear that multiple aerial installation, aerial assets are the prime target for the Pakistanis, but they have been failing miserably time and again. While on the other side, we have managed to reach out to important air installations of the Pakistani army, and the biggest example is Rahim Yar Khan airstrip, which has been busted by the forces. Now, what sources have been suggesting that Pakistan can once again attempt to target the Srinagar air base. These sources have been suggesting, following to which there is a very high level of alertness, but the manner in which we had given a very befitting reply to the aerial drones which were sent, around swarm of drones of 500 to 700 which were sent towards the Indian airspace. That kind of reply will once again be given. But we know it for the fact that Pakistanis have been trying to escalate the situation further. What forces have clearly suggested, and as you rightly said, India has certainly said that any act of terror will be taken as a war against the country. So certainly the country is prepared. We have shown it in the last 4 days, and now once again, if they will attempt to send more missiles or drone towards Indian airspace, we are ready for the reply back. just the manner in which we have managed to burst the airstrip of Rahim Yar Khan airstrip. Multiple air installations of Pakistan were already targeted by India, and Rahim Yar Khan is the biggest example which we have shown it to the Pakistanis.
Thank you, Priyanka. Now, let me just show our viewers where all did we see action by Pakistan after 1:40 a.m. Last night, early this morning, from Baramulla to Srinagar, Poonch, Avantipura, Rajouri, Akhnoor, Udhampur, Nagrota, Jammu, Samba, Pathankot, Jalandhar, Amritsar, Firozpur, Sirsa, Fazilka, as well as Lalgarh, Jatta, Jaisalmer and Barmer. These are the places that Pakistan, 26 places where Pakistan attacked, and when we responded, we flattened the ground in Noor Khan Air Base, in Rawalpindi, in the Murid Air Base, in Chakwal, in Sialkot, in Pasroor, in the DHA area of Lahore, in Chunia, also the Rafiki Air Base in Shorkot, Rahim Yar Khan Air Base, the Sukur Air Base. We've made it clear, we will go precision and we will destroy every military target if you target ours. And that is the message from India right to Pakistan. None of your missiles are going to really work because they've been thwarted by our air defense systems, and these are visuals of the manner in which we have destroyed the Rahim Yar Khan air base in Pakistan. And if you look at these visuals, it actually tells you the black smoke coming out of there, of the extent of damage that has been caused to their runways, to their buildings, and the manner in which these air bases have been destroyed. Noor Khan Air Base, just look at the manner it's gone up in flames, and the runway completely hit, completely destroyed. This is what Pakistan deserves. This is what it will get. Any escalation on Pakistan's side will meet with a response from India that will be seen as an act of war if Pakistan tries to put terror. And there have been so many admissions that have been made. Joining me this evening, a very, very experienced panel of guests, and let me introduce them before I go across for other updates to Pragya. But joining me this evening, Rear Admiral K. Raja Menon, joining me from Delhi. Also joining me, Ambassador Yashwardhan Kumar Sinha, Air Marshal Diptendu Chaudhary, Major General SVP Singh, former Additional Director General of the Artillery, in the studios with me, Colonel Amit Menon, Air Warfare Specialist, and Dr. Anand Ranganathan. To you first, Dr. Anand Ranganathan, paradigm shift in the policy, given the fact that India has now made it clear any terror export from Pakistan will be seen as an act of war?
Good evening, Navika, and good evening to my fellow panelists. I might get tired of saying this, but it is such an honor and a privilege to be sharing the panel with such luminaries who are experts, and I have so much to learn from it. So thank you so much for including me in the panel. A couple of points to make here. It is undoubtedly a tectonic shift, and I speak as a layman who is a proud Indian like all of us are. And I cannot congratulate the government and the Prime Minister enough for what has been said today. The pithy remark encapsulates 1 billion emotions, and I'll tell you why. Because we have suffered through this dogma of Pakistan for decades, and I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and I do remember 80s. You know, Zia's policy, and then carrying on from there, death by 1,000 cuts, and the Punjab issue, Kashmir issue, everything. And slowly but surely, Pakistan was strangling us. And despite the dastardly attacks on our soil that were at that point of time our greatest terror attacks to have befallen on India, 26/11, despite the fact that our ex-air chief is on record saying that he besieged the then Prime Minister to bomb Pakistani terror hideouts in the wake of 26/11, but was prevented to do so, despite the fact that a year later in the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, rather than us blaming Pakistan, we accepted that Pakistan blamed us, and we said we have nothing to do with the Balochistan thing, we would refrain for it. From there to today, It is an absolute tectonic shift, and it makes me proud because from now, the so-called nuclear bluff lies in the bin somewhere. And from now on, every terror attack would be dealt like we are dealing with in the wake of the Pahalgam terror attack. I'm absolutely proud of this statement.
Absolutely. Rear Admiral K. Raja Menon, my question to you is, this tectonic shift that we are talking about, will this go unnoticed? Because so far, we've seen homilies, we've seen words, but we have seen very little action from the world community, from the United Nations, especially after the IMF has given financial clearances despite knowing where this money is going to go in Pakistan. The fact that this message has gone out from India, unequivocal, that we don't need any support, any crutches, and that we're going to go out and fight our battle with terror, even if it has to be done alone.
Navika, thank you for having me. Yes.
The honor is ours.
We are on our own. We can't expect anyone to come and hold our hand in this situation. And I think it is time that we change the doctrine as far as attacks on our soil are concerned. And if Pahalgam leads to a change in that doctrine, then I think it's a very good thing. Other countries affected by terrorism have reacted very sharply. And I can't think of, when I think of this particular incident, I can't help feel that this is the unfortunate work of just one man who has created this conflagration in South Asia, Asim Munir. Other countries have shown what they do with individuals who use terror to attack their countries. I'm thinking of the fate of Ayman Zawahiri, who was one of the planners of the 9/11 attacks on the United States. He was standing on his balcony in Afghanistan, looking up at the sky, when he was made into mincemeat by a predator's missile. Or take the example of Nasrallah, who shifted his residence every 2 days in Lebanon. But the Israelis found him. And the successor to Nasrallah, who was eliminated 2 weeks later, we have to act in a similar fashion. And I hope that this is the beginning of such a doctrine.
Absolutely. Beginning of this doctrine, which should have come after 26/11, I would have thought. But Air Marshal Diptendu Chaudhary, the kind of airstrikes that we've seen, we waited. Yesterday, there were swarms of these drones that came in. There have been missiles that have been fired, surface-to-surface missiles that have been fired. Clearly, the escalation yesterday has brought out this paradigm shift in the doctrine that we've followed so far, and the message is very clear. I want to ask you, if India has the capability to blast its air bases, would the message go across to Pakistan? Would it attempt any misadventure tonight? Or do you think the worst is over? How would you read the mind games that Pakistan may be planning and strategizing?
Thank you for having me over, Navika. And it's absolutely an honor to be with among such luminaries this evening. On the issue of our ability to hit airfields, and that is a very important aspect of the IAF's offensive air power doctrine. It's called counter-air operations, which remains very central to the whole offensive doctrine of air power. But very interestingly, it's like a conjoined twins. And who's the other twin? Air defense. And air defense today there's been a paradigm shift in air defense where Actually, air defense, to my mind, and that is what I've been writing about for quite some time, is a misnomer now, because it's no longer defensive. It enables enormous offensive capability, wherein your radars, and that is your sensors, and your shooters, that is your long-range weapon systems, missiles, SAMs, looks well into the adversarial territory. And this deters the adversary's air power. Now, Pakistani Air Force has had the history of, after an initial actions, pulling back to their depth bases. And they have a whole series of frontier airfields, which they are no longer operating for, possibly, and because they would have most certainly moved back to the depth bases. And the attacks that we are carrying out on their airfields has happened and been taken on only after our airfields have been struck. The last 2 days, when you see the targeting, amongst the other targets which you have seen, a fair amount of them, a fairly large number, have been Indian Air Force frontline bases. And the interesting aspect is, because of our integrated offensive air defense capability, it has deterred and pushed back the PAF, wherein they are unable to use their air power, their fighters, to carry out targeting in our areas, and have got no choice to fall back on missiles and drones. Another aspect I want to bear in mind, the drones have a huge, they're actually a new age, new kid in the town, literally, in the field of warfare. But they have proven their prowess in the Russo-Ukraine war, where they've been used extensively, but they do have limits. But interestingly, what they're doing, they're sending in swarm drones, large amount of small drones, for two reasons. A, to try and saturate the air defense system. B, continuous attacks of cheap small drones keeps the populace under pressure, keeps the air defense, Indian air defense, under pressure, because now the aim is to try and wear out our defense. But in what I think the Pakistani leadership has miscalculated on the resilience of the Indian military and the preparation which we have been undertaking for a very, very long time. So I wouldn't place too much on these initial attacks of theirs, and our response in targeting, if you notice, have been on these bases with just one odd or a few odd weapon systems. To take out an airfield, you need to do intense targeting. And this is just a signal to the Pakistani Air Force that we can hit your air bases at will, and the quantum of targeting, the intensity of targeting will depend on you. Thank you, Nabika.
Absolutely. The quantum, the time, and the place that we choose to target will be ours, but this will be done only because there is provocation. But Ambassador Yashwardhan Sinha, my question to you is also about the fact that we had got, between 2019 and 2024, a big reduction in terror attacks in India. If you look at Jammu and Kashmir itself, 2019, the number stood at 153, came down right up to 25 in 2024. Is it this that bothers Pakistan? And tonight, I also want to ask you the question. When Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States, has to call up the army chief and speak to him to drill some sense into the de-escalation effort, do you really believe that this is a demonstration to the world of how Pakistan is a failed state, where the political leadership cannot convince the army leadership, and the army leadership has to be spoken to directly? Is this the complete end of any protocol and the declaration that Pak is actually a military state?
Thank you, Navika. Thank you for having me on your show, and good evening to all the fellow panelists. Before I answer your question, I think I want to recall what happened when I was personally about 15 years ago. We were at the Pentagon in a delegation, and we were trying to convince our interlocutors that that there is no true democracy in Pakistan, because the elected governments really don't count for much, and it's the men in khaki that counts. And there was a strong pushback from our American friends, saying that they deal with both the military leadership and the civilian leadership. In fact, the civilian leadership was a nascent leadership at that point of time, and they were very keen and they were engaging them, etc. And then somebody in our delegation, sort of mischievously, I guess, asked, can anybody in this room name the defense minister of Pakistan? And there was an embarrassed silence. So that sums it up in terms of how at least the United States used to engage Pakistan and perhaps still does. But that is a different question, because we all know that Pakistan is not a democracy really. It's a sham democracy. But around that time, well, 33 years ago, when I started dealing with Pakistan, I was imparted this wisdom. It's actually a self-evident truism, and if I may repeat that a peaceful and prosperous Pakistan, at peace with itself and at peace with its neighbors, is in India's best interest. Now, I mean, it's obviously true, it is absolutely correct, but has Pakistan ever been peaceful? Has Pakistan ever been peaceful with itself and its neighbors? Never. So, you know, that truism will never come true. And I think we need to abandon such shibboleths, because Pakistan identifies us as the eternal enemy. And unfortunately, till recently, I think, and even now, you hear these stray voices that speak of, you know, talking to Pakistan, trying to reach an amicable solution. But for what? To turn off the faucet of terrorism? Is that we're supposed to have a dialogue for that? And with a nuclear saber rattling on the other side, so under the overhang of a nuclear umbrella, they can cause damage with impunity, undertake terrorist attacks as a matter of state policy. So, I mean, it's absurd to be asked to speak to people who are perpetrators of terrorism. So I'm very happy that the government has given a very robust response at this time. And I think sometimes I feel, I mean, if we didn't have nuclear weapons in the equation, I would even advise that we take it to its logical conclusion. But one lesson that we have learned, that Pakistan will never be our friend, and we shouldn't even try and attempt to convert Pakistan to a friend. We have failed miserably in the last 77, 78 years. It is our enemy. And if it is our enemy, we need to adopt a set of measures to ensure that Pakistan meets the fate that it deserves.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Ambassador Sinha. But big breaking news coming in. Turkish kamikaze drones shot down by the army in Nowshera. Turkish origin kamikaze drones, also known as the loitering munition or a suicide drone. These drones that are unmanned, those visuals there on your screen, these are the drones, the kamikaze drones that have been shot down. These visuals coming to us from Nowshera. So Pakistan not backing off, the drones coming in, the missiles have come from Pakistan through the day. Each one of them has been neutralized by the Indian Army and our air defense systems. Clearly, our defense forces completely on guard, completely on top of games that Pakistan wants to play, and taking no chances anywhere. Let me go across to Pragya as well as Arunil joining me live at this point. Pragya, to you first. 6 p.m. we understand there will be a briefing once again. This is the second briefing today by the Ministry of External Affairs, Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, and the Ministry of Defense with Colonel Qureshi as well as Squadron Leader Vyomika Singh coming out. Are we expecting a big announcement? Are we expecting more steps that India is going to take, and a report on how much these air bases in Pakistan have been damaged today?
Absolutely, and I would say that this is the first time ever since this escalation started that MOD and also Ministry of External Affairs is going to do a presser together twice in a day. So it means that there is something big. We are understanding that there is action from the Pakistan side and we are responding in an appropriate and measured manner. But we also need to understand there is also a political will. We are a democratic country, and the visuals that have come from the meeting of Prime Minister where he was with the Tri-Services Chief, CDS, NSA, IB Chief and RAW Chief, Prime Minister was speaking to them. It also shows that there is a political will and there is also a messaging of the people. Sentiment of the people is also very important in the country, and this is exactly what the government did today, saying that any act of terror will be considered an act of war. This is what India is also telling the world, and there is a vision behind this. Prime Minister knew that there would be a day when this day would come, and in fact the starting of in having the support from the Western world, be it UK, many of the MPs including Rishi Sunak, Foreign Minister of UK, and in fact Netherlands, we had French Foreign Minister who was supporting India's right to defend itself and also retaliate in the same manner. This didn't come in a single day. Prime Minister had garnered this support over a period of years. Remember when opposition said that Prime Minister is always out of the country? Now we are bearing the fruits of that particular efforts that were put in by Prime Minister. So, this coordination meeting was very important from the perspective that there is a better coordination, like earlier when file used to go from office to office and one defense wing to second defense wing. This is a place where Prime Minister
clearly an era of the past where that used to happen. These days it is real-time strategizing and probably the Prime Minister involved at every step of the way, and of course the National Security Advisor, who has probably not had a wink of sleep over the last 5 days since the heightened tensions between India and Pakistan have surfaced. Going across to Arunil, who joins me from Bhuj. Arunil, Gujarat, the Kutch area, Jaisalmer, all of these areas are being seen as areas where there is a heightened sense of anticipation that Pakistan could try something. What is the situation? What kind of alerts have been sounded? And I hope things are under control and both civilians as well as you and our crew are absolutely safe.
Well, Navika ji, be it 1965 war or the 1971 war, Bhuj, the town of Bhuj has played a very crucial role in India's victory at that time, particularly in the 1971 war when the Bhuj air base was completely destroyed. It took 300 women from Bhuj itself.
Arunil, big breaking news coming in. President Donald Trump has just tweeted, after a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I'm pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That is President Donald Trump making this statement here on Madhav joining me, Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan. This is the big breakthrough. We heard that there was a call that went from Mark Rubio straight to the army chief, clearly reading the riot act to him, following which we have this announcement by President Trump.
Absolutely, Navika. There's an unmistakable mark of the United States. As you rightly put it, Mark Rubio first reaching out to the Prime Minister. That didn't work, and then he reached out to the Army Chief. And we saw those signs with Khwaja Asif, in fact, dialing down the nuclear rhetoric earlier today. But this is the Truth Social post of President Donald Trump. He said that after a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I'm pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This is, of course, the United States intervention. But one thing is very clear, Navika, India has been very restrained. But clearly, over the last 24 to 48 hours, India has given back to Pakistan and given it back in kind. While we may not have gone to the extent that Pakistan has, but clearly the fact that their strategic assets, their various air assets and air bases that have been impacted, and there is, in fact, imagery of satellites to show that even runways of several of the crucial air bases places such as Sargodha have been severely impacted. It is a beaten and battered Pakistan that has clearly had no other option but to go in and beg for this kind of a ceasefire, because if Pakistan had continued on this path, it would be a guaranteed path of destruction, and that finally is the only language that Pakistan appears to have understood as far as this entire confrontation is concerned. Back to
Madhav, the fact that India had flattened 5 of the air bases of Pakistan, clearly the smell of smoke as well as the phone call, the very, very hot line that was made to General Munir did the trick, because the riot act was read to him, and that can be our major speculation. But Colonel Amit Menon also on this. With this, what do you think? Quick reactions across my panel. Colonel Amit Menon, could this have happened because there was absolute clarity when Marco Rubio called up the army chief, because the political leadership was unable to convince the army chief in Pakistan?
Good evening, Navika. Thank you for having me on the panel. It's absolutely a breakthrough. See, in the past, always Pakistan had backing of a lot of international powers, especially the US. This is the first time when Vice President J.D. Vance said in very clear terms that we are not going to stop India. And that is the time, because Pakistan knows that they can only play a cat and mouse game with us. They are nowhere near any of our capabilities. They can't match. Most probably the war would have lasted for about 4 to 5 days maximum, with their air force getting completely destroyed, their army assets getting completely destroyed. So it is a lot of common sense on Pakistan's part. But my first reaction after seeing the tweet is that most probably our diplomats, and I think Ambassador Sinha might be able to speculate better on that, would have extracted some kind of concessions from Pakistan for agreeing to this
Absolutely,
ceasefire.
Ambassador Sinha, what do you think would have happened behind the scenes, given the fact that the telltale sign, the fact that Marco Rubio dialed General Munir, and then a second press briefing, this time by the External Affairs Minister at 6 p.m., the telltale signs of some amount of de-escalation as well as an agreement, a diplomatic agreement, seems to be the manner in which this has taken place now?
Navika, I'm not quite sure of the details of the denouement that is about to take place, if at all. But one thing is clear, that India has always stood on the side of peace. However, when provoked, we respond. And our very robust response has convinced not only Pakistan, but the rest of the world that we mean business. And we would have gone on and flattened the rest of Pakistan if they had continued with their cowardly attacks on convents, temples, gurdwaras, hospitals all over northern India, particularly in our state of Jammu and Kashmir. So I think while it may be a victory for diplomacy, I remember what happened after Kargil, when Nawaz Sharif rushed to Washington, and on the 4th of July was made to agree to withdraw his troops from the heights of Kargil after being beaten back for most part of that war. So I think there's a history behind this. The Americans have leverage, and I think no Pakistani leader, whether civilian and certainly not sitting in GHQ Rawalpindi, can defy an American diktat, because the relationship between the US and Pakistan, and particularly the Pentagon and GHQ, go back well into the Cold War and after. So I think it's a good development that if there is de-escalation, a lot of lives will be spared. But I think as far as India is concerned, we have to be very mindful that this is not the end, that we now know exactly what Pakistan has in mind for us under the current leadership, particularly the military leadership. We have to be wary, and we need to respond, and not just respond to acts of aggression. We need to ensure...
Absolutely. I have to interrupt you there, Ambassador Sinha, because Srinjoy Chaudhary joining me. And Srinjoy, what is the inside story? How was this peace deal, so-called peace deal, brokered? India put out its warning there. India flattened their air bases. India was not going to take it lying down. And that was the message that went across straight to the United States of America, which then worked the phone lines, which they had been working unsuccessfully for the last 3 days. And today, we see the result. What's the back channel telling you?
Navika, as we have discussed and put on air, the Americans have been working the phones. Now, there were 2 or 3 very important points. You mentioned the first and most important ones, that India told the Americans that, look, we are the ones who are the aggrieved party. Pathankot and all those things apart. Pahalgam was the thing which made us do what we did. Now it's up to Pakistan. And this is something the Americans understood, which is why that most important call that was made to the Pakistani army chief. It's one thing to speak to Shahbaz Sharif, but the fact that Marco Rubio told the Pakistani army chief that cool it, and that was that big moment. After that, we know that the Pakistanis backed off. That was a very critical point. It's only after India made it clear to the Americans that we will go ahead and do what we have to do under these circumstances that the Americans spoke to the Pakistanis and changed the circumstances, Navika. That is the important point. These 24 hours have been very critical since yesterday afternoon. Between yesterday afternoon and today evening, these 24 hours have been very critical, and you have been part of this whole process as well. And we know that this was going to come, and finally it is with us. Now,
absolutely, we will now have to wait for the 6 p.m. briefing by the Ministry of External Affairs and the Ministry of Defense. But Major General Singh, how do you see these very